Hello and welcome to Upload,
A podcast by those who upload, for those who want to.
or who already do.
And anyone else for that matter.
My name is Lionheart and I've been creating content for over a decade.
And my name's Midgeman, and I've been trying to create content for almost a decade.
Together with some of our friends and fellow content creators, we're going to be exploring the great big world of content creation.
We'll be looking into the serious topics that face content creators today.
Because if someone said that to me like in person, or said that kind of stuff to me, you know, IRL, I wouldn't take it. So why would I take it like online? Why would I hide aspects of sort of my identity?
As well as some less serious topics.
I've been blindsided by the fact that one of your old live streams is called Suck My Missile for like the last
Sorry,
10
what?
minutes.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy another episode of Upload.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Upload, the content creator podcast for those who upload, for those who want to, and everyone in between. My name is Midgeman.
And I'm Lionheart.
And before we get into today's episode, remember to like, review, rate, and turn on any auto downloaders that you might have. Subscribe and all those fun things. And if you want to reach out to the podcast, either get in touch via the YouTube comments or contact us at hello@uploadpodcast.co.uk. And before we get on to the actual episode, a fun suggestion for a future episode, and we will need you to email in for this. We thought we would do your content creator setup reviews.
Ooh, yes.
So we will take some photos of your office space or your gear, and we'll just have a look and we'll, give it a rate. And we'll try to guess if you're creating like YouTube content, if you're or if you're someone else. Just send us your setups and we'll see if you're a content creator or not by how your setup looks. And my rule of thumb when that comes around is going to be the jankier your setup looks, you're probably a content creator.
But I always see when people like share their gaming setups, or there's a whole Reddit called Battle Stations. If you ever want some like really good like inspiration or ideas of like a really nice gaming setup, have a look at r/Battle Stations. But like those are always so sleek and minimalistic and clean. I'm like, where's all the random like bits of paper or just just crap on your desk? That's like whenever I see like I know another content creator go like, oh, here's my new setup, and I'm like, right, you've either just built that or you've just spent the last like 2 or 3 hours tidying up everything. And also like that's the one thing I'm looking around mine right now and going like, I really need to just wipe everything because there's just so much dust on everything. It doesn't help that I've got like a black desk, so it just shows up.
So I've been getting so annoyed at dust on this black desk, and because it's a leather top as well, it really shows. That's been like my one. Also, this house I live in is very dusty, and ever since we did the renovations, there's been like dust everywhere. I have to now dust like every other day. I bought myself like an
air duster.
I now have a Hoover in my office for my desk.
Oh Christ, yeah.
Like I fully have an electric Hoover. This was actually a really good one. It was on Amazon. I can't remember the brand.
Off-brand Dyson.
It's an off-brand Dyson, but it's kind of, we have one of the Dysons, and this is better. So I now have this at all times and use it to clean this desk all of the time because I hate how that looks. I hate it. I really dislike it. Anyway, today we have an interesting topic of let's just move aside from our rambling, and it is going to be a rambly episode.
Definitely.
It's now been technically like 3 months, but like 1-ish and a bit month of this podcast being live. We've had some guest episodes. We've had a lot of rambly episodes with us. We thought we'd just kind of take a look and take stock of how we've been doing, but also how our own channels have been doing, because you've taken some time off and you've been trying to get back into content creation. I've been doing some content creation and somewhat succeeding, but also I've had a lot of failures recently. And it's just going to be one of those things of what have we learned in the last couple of weeks that is points and stuff of actually this content creation malarkey, even though we are established, is still quite hard. And that's kind of the focus of today's podcast.
I mean, I don't really want to look at my analytics. Everything's got a grey down arrow next to it right now.
Oh, really?
Everything's down. I've had like essentially four weeks off of either like 2 of those weeks where I was completely off, and it was, instead of having 14 to 16 videos out a week, it was 3 videos a week. So that obviously immediately is going to have a substantial hit. And then I had 2 kind of half weeks or like flexible working hour weeks where I wasn't streaming as much, so I wasn't creating as much content from that, and then trying to get that in. And then this week in particular, like trying to get back into it, my first proper like full-time week, I've then just been hit by hay fever and just been really out of it. And I took all of yesterday off pretty much so everything's down. But also on top of that, as I kind of remind myself, I wasn't expecting stuff to be like peaking into new highs right now, just because I've got like 3 or 4 series that are all heading towards their end anyway. So everything's trailing off. And I kind of did that purposely. Normally in the ideal world, I would constantly have it so that if like half my series are coming to an end, I've got some new ones starting very soon from other ones ending, and can layer it over so that it never fully dives down. But because I knew I had some time coming up where I was going to be off with the new baby and everything, I was like, there's no point starting new stuff and then taking a break from it. So we'll just let everything come down. It's going to be a process of basically the next, like probably still another like month or so to pull it up. I mean, I've got a couple of series all coming to an end. 1 or 2 have already ended. So there will be new stuff coming in to start replacing it in the next few weeks. So hopefully that'll start pulling things up. And if it doesn't, then essentially it'll be kind of just trundling along until one of the games that I typically cover release either some new content, new DLC, or a new game over the coming months. So yeah, we're in kind of sit back and panic mode, but also like accept that I know why it's all trending down. Like it's really hard to not look at the this is one of those times where I'm like, right, I'd be better off not checking my analytics. It's just going to stress me out. And yeah, I mean, I'll talk to my wife about it, and like, I just need someone to offload all this info, and she'll just be like, yeah, but this is what happens periodically. You know, you have this 2 or 3 times a year where everything's coming to an end. You don't have any new stuff starting. So of course it's all going to look bleak and like it's doing poorly. I mean, I say it's doing poorly. I'm still making a comfortable amount of revenue from it with all the time that I've spent on like YouTube and stuff like that. I should know that it's even a dip and a dive down is perfectly recoverable from, but you always have this thing in the back of your mind, seeing things start trending down and trend down for a little while. You go, this is it. This is the falling off point. I can never recover. Of course you can. I think as well, the fact that so far June will probably be my worst month. It's also kind of taking stock of that and being like, oh, okay. I mean, I've worked really hard to push through January and February, recovering after the AdSense issues of last November and December. And then April ended up being really good because we had finally at last some new Total War content, plus we had Manor Lords and stuff like that. So like, yeah, you were due a fall off. Like it's never going to be constant high. I'm sticking within the comfort zone of the like 2 or 3 different games and series that I cover. So, you know, you've had their new release, and then there's going to naturally be a drop off. And if I look through my analytics, I'm like, oh, look, I can look back last year and be like, oh yeah, there was the peak, the new stuff, and there was the drop off afterwards. And then the previous year, oh look, there was the peak with some DLC. Oh, look, it happened 2 or 3 times across the year, and it all, you know, all relates back to it. But it is still a scary moment, even for an established creator after all these years, seeing it suddenly take a dip. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, no, it's not. It's gonna recover. It's gonna be fine.
And it's one of those things, you need to take your own advice from a previous episode. Like when I think it's just gone out at the time. It's just due to go out tomorrow at the time of recording this, which is the episode, the last one we did before you went on paternity leave. And you had to say, at this point, whatever happens. Like if I have to take an extra time off, I have to take extra time off. And it's just learning to be comfortable with that. In a similar vein, in recent times at the moment, like since we last really spoke about it, since before our last big session where we were just taking stock, etc., my own channel has done surprisingly well thanks to Manor Lords.
Stuff
My
Manor
Lords absolutely popped off, and I had 3 videos do it. Like, put it this way, in 3 videos, I have added 25% to my channel's overall viewership.
Lovely.
And ridiculous. It did ridiculously well. But then I tried to do a piece of content, which was a 4th Manor Lords video, to transition some of the new audience to my normal style. And it absolutely flopped comparatively. And the mental shake that took from going, oh, I've been doing well, to, oh, I've I've messed it up slightly. I've accidentally dropped that. I've dropped that ball. Is one of those ones of and it took me about a week to like get out of the funk mentally of going, damn, I just spent 20 hours editing a video after 3 really solid videos, and to even go around, right, what are we doing next kind of thing, because it was just one of those things of, oh no, has the king of missed opportunities made another missed opportunity? Let's find out. And it's like, maybe I have, but if I haven't, it's like one of those things of, I'm glad I took that mental reset slightly, and also 2, at the end of the day, I just need to be proud of those videos doing well, and hopefully we'll have more of those down the line. I mean, at the time of recording, Mr. Dan, he's actually editing right this second the next Manor video that we're doing, which is in a completely different style to any other video that we've ever done, just because we went, basically, after that flop, we went, let's try something absolutely completely different and see how that does compared, because it might have just been that video and that topic wasn't as appealing. And now also just on the whole time factor and not posting factors, like I did 4 videos in May. That's essentially it. But I haven't posted since then, and it's currently the middle of June, and my brain, I don't know if this is the same for you, but my brain goes, oh no, I haven't pushed a piece of content. I need to do some sort of content creation. There needs to be something that goes out right now, rather than actually sometimes, especially with edited content, it's probably better to just sit on your laurels and go, nope, make sure the video is perfect. Make sure it is as good as it can be for it to have the best opportunity of doing well.
Yeah, definitely. No, I actually spent this morning actually re-recording an episode, which I very rarely do, because often I'm like, you know what, some of my best moments come from me having like a bad episode or a bad bit of gameplay that I then have to recover from. But it was more a case of, I looked at it and I was like, I could tell I felt like my commentary was really spaced out because I was probably suffering from hay fever and everything else. And I was just like, yeah, that's just not the right one I want to do next. Like, there's so many mistakes in, you can tell basically I'm not well and I shouldn't have recorded that bit. Like, but obviously you're pushing yourself to go through it because you're like, I need to make some content. Yeah, I spent the morning re-recording it, and I've come away from that now. That's just been rendering in the background. I'm like, that's the better one to then launch forward with. That's good. Even for established creators that have had these like events occur many times before, it's really hard to get out of that. As you say, like, you know, you had like a week of trying to get out of that mindset, because it does hit you every time. Like, to take a positive out of it, it's like, okay, fine, it's not done as well as I'd hoped, but let's have a look at some of the data then to see if there's a specific reason for that. We haven't quite hit the mark. I think it brings back something like Leif mentioned when we had him. I think he was kind of saying like he doesn't really ever view those personally as particularly like negative experiences, because it's still something you can take out of that and you can still learn from it. And it's like, okay, well, we didn't quite hit the mark on, you know, what we set for a specific bit of content, but that doesn't mean that we can't use the data from that to be like, right, well, our next one could be influenced by what didn't work for that and how we can take it forward. For my situation, I've just got to kind of tell myself, it's like, it's not that you didn't do anything right. It's like you took time off to be with your family.
Yes, you did the thing that is healthy for you to do and not work through your paternity leave. Take some time to enjoy the magical moments of like the early times of having a second child, to be there to support your loving wife. And it's like, yeah, you can't hate yourself for that. Yeah, we spoke about like I had a bit of a funk, and it was one of those things of like, okay, like it was good. Let's be inspired to do something else. And yeah, I think Leif put it perfectly in trying to learn from the mistakes. One of the mistakes that I made with that video is it launched with a thumbnail that just for me I liked, but instantaneously people didn't like, and it didn't get a good click through, which means it didn't get pushed as much with the others.
The data stuff for me to look at is quite literally of like, why is everything trending down right now? So, well, because you come from this period where you went from uploading your normal rate to not uploading your normal rate. So of course that's going to impact it, because there's less content for the algorithm to push. Your regular viewers, because some of them like constantly check in daily, and they're eventually going to, they start dropping off if basically they look and they're like, oh, he's not uploading anything for like 2 or 3 days. Okay, fine. You know, it only takes them to miss 1 or 2 clicks and then suddenly that has an effect. It is just a case of rebuilding from that. I mean, actually something interesting I've just been doing in the background. I went back and looked at what my stats were analytics wise for June last year. And actually similar sort of thing. I'm not having another child because didn't have that. That wasn't
The
last year.
secret child that no one knows about.
Nobody knows the secret Lionheart love baby. No, last year there were a couple of one-offs, but then actually the drop off after that, they're actually coming in like the regular long format content is actually coming in lower in terms of views and in terms of revenue. And that, if I look at it, it's reflected that basically I had a couple of series that weren't quite hitting the mark as much as I wanted to. They were also further along. So I know that actually kind of coming back now and still having some Let's Plays that have still been going for a while and are coming to an end, but they're performing better now than my ones a year were in a similar sort of place. So I'm like, oh, that's fine. It definitely helps when you see all the green check marks and be like, oh yeah, things are going good. But it is the most soul destroying thing, seeing the red or the grey stuff, and you're like, oh, I've missed.
Yeah, it's not even red, it's grey. It's
Yeah,
like one of those
it's
things
just
that
like
it doesn't even pick up as good or bad. It's just like,
it's just
there.
like, oh dear, yeah.
June as a period, like we've spoke about January being the lowest CPM.
Middle of the summer, it's quiet.
Middle of summer, but also June is exam period for schools. So like if you've got a naturally sort of slightly younger audience, it's always going to be one of those slightly rougher things. But then July and August for you will be a big pickup month because it'll be like, oh, everyone's off. They've got loads more time.
So perfect time to start some new content. Going to be probably hitting the end of this month. Might be some stuff. I'm literally starting a new Manlord series. Hopefully the first episode going out tonight once I stream some today. Next week I'm planning a new Realm of Thrones series with Banlord. And the first episode is going to be called House of the Dragon, obviously. That's playing as a role-playing as a lost Targaryen that's going to help Daenerys retake the Iron Throne and have some fun with some dragons and stuff. So that's like, that should be a solid winner. Plus, on top of that, CK3, my next series, when I finish my current one in the next week or two, I'm finally going to go back and check out the Lord of the Rings overhaul mod, because they've now got the full, like they haven't got not everything's perfectly scripted in events and balanced for every single faction. But they have said that you can have a very good campaign experience playing as the Moria expedition as Balin. Dwarves, Moria, there's always a lot of like good stuff around that, and that
you've
tends
got a
to do
very
pretty well.
dwarfy community, like very, they're very, you've got that.
I think
it's the
dwarf.
beard. Yeah, I think it's the beard, and it's also just like, because also I remember like in your chat, like there's a lot of popularity for when you play Total War as the dwarves. Everyone's like, yeah, give us a dwarf campaign. People want a beard waggle and an axe swing. That's what they want. Like, give it the people. You've said before, like, do another Rome series is like your break class in case of danger. But I think for you as well, do another dwarf base.
Do another dwarf campaign, yeah. I mean, actually, I've thought of another kind of break glass moment that I'm planning on doing. New CK3 stuff, new Banlord stuff. There's going to be a new Total War campaign with the final Lord from the last DLC pack that I haven't yet covered when one of my current series ends. But I also, once my older Napoleon series ends, I want to go back and revisit Empire Total War, which is still one of the buggiest of the Total War games, but also none of them have quite reached that scope and scale on how ambitious CA were with that title, which they've kind of openly said is part of the reason why it's in such a poor state. They tried to do too much in that game, bring in naval combat, multiple theatres of war, and just the scope and scale of it all, and it didn't hit good quality across all those markers. But there are some really good overhaul mods now for that game that I know people have been saying for quite some time. Wouldn't that be like a good opportunity to come back? And I've previously sworn off it because I'm like, it's a buggy mess. Like the last couple of campaigns I've done, I've had to end them prematurely because the save game corrupts and I can't load it anymore, or it just starts crashing all the time. But apparently these mods change that. A new break glass one that I'm planning on doing fairly soon is to return to do another Great Britain campaign in Empire Total War, and send the Redcoats across the world with one of these overhaul mods on that supposedly quite change up the formula a little bit and bring in some interesting new features and bits and pieces to it. So yeah, that's my way out of like the funk right now. Is like, right, well, plan ahead your next few series, because you know stuff's coming to an end, even if it doesn't take off dramatically with the new stuff, because I think you probably get to a point where ultimately people are like, he is just playing the same old games again and again and again. There's only so many more factions he can check out. Hopefully then we'll be at a point where there'll be some new games, some new DLC content out. Try and get into Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, but I need to replay 1 to get back into the story of that. So yeah, got lots of future plans to get into it, but it's tough to look at the stats and everything else and be like, oh, it's right. But yeah, you just ultimately have to sort of just tell yourself, Alex the Rambler has said on numerous occasions, I've seen him tweet about it, I've seen him talk about it, but I know for a very long time he'd say he would just flat out not look at his analytics because it would kind of upset him. It would get to him. He'd feel stressed out by it. And he felt that he produced much better content and had more fun when he wasn't constantly chasing, you know, the green ticks. And that is so important, especially with, you know, kind of fairly regular content uploads and style and everything else. It's not healthy to kind of constantly chase that. There are times where it's going to work and it's worth following the trends, but YouTube doesn't do you any favors for taking a break or anything else. You've got to try and make the kind of the moments in between count for you and kind of some self-care in there. I mean, I'd love to say maybe one day the ecosystem changes and it's far less punishing if you take a break, but it's never going to be, because it's just not how digital trends and stuff are going to work and the algorithms with pushing content. I would say though, it would be great for Twitch to do more to support streamers and creators by making them feel like they can actually take a break and a breather from streaming and not have their channels feel like they're completely dead when they're offline. And the way around that, Twitch, is to offer some video content. YouTube doing it from video and then going into live stream, it may not be perfect in its live stream format right now, but it has a much better support for creators that are live on the platform once they're not live, because they've got all that library and that algorithmic growth for all your video content. Even just for creators that just stream on YouTube and then just let the VODs sit there afterwards, like that's still going to work far harder and better for you with zero input from you as a creator than doing the same thing on Twitch, because quite literally the moment you hit end stream on Twitch, Twitch does not care about you anymore. There's no push, there's no algorithm, there's nothing for you. Whereas at least on YouTube, you know, you're then fed into your stream then becomes a VOD and then plays into all of that system and setup and what have you.
Just to like turn this into stuff and people who are growing now, like trying to grow now, let's kind of sidestep and take a look at Upload. Going into Upload, I had an expectation that we would have slightly better viewership than we currently have at time of recording. But at that regard also, it is still kind of tracking because, again, we're on multiple platforms and multiple audiences. So like I go into the Upload YouTube channel and I look at like the most recent video, which right now has like 11 views on the podcast variant. And that's like, oh, that's so much work. But then I have to take into account, no, that's 11 views there. That's like 11 views or like 11 to 20 listens on the audio format. And then there's another 40 on the like Spotify version. I feel like we are at a place where we're slightly smaller than I think both of us had expected on this as a show. And that's one of those things as well for us that as a takeaway, at least for me, I've been like, actually, this isn't as hot yet, but it's also one of those things that I have to have faith in it and go, but at the same time, it is a brand that is completely new. It's a completely new IP. We don't have like a 100% traction rate with the rest of our audience. Like it's probably like 1% of each of our audiences that are actually creators themselves, which is like the direct appeal. And then the people that are interested into the industry outside of that, and then people that like us. There's a lot less for like, for example, your Total War fan base or my CK following that will go in and listen to this and go, yes, this is something that I like. As much as they might like us and like our content, not every topic we cover here is going to be something that they listen to, which is fine. Those elements that haven't met expectation, we definitely have some successes, like some of our shorts have done well, and some of our short content is like getting a regular view count, which is great. It's just transiting that audience into the podcast hasn't been as successful. But again, that's just the nature of being something completely new. And it's weird feeling like a completely new content creator again. Even when I took a huge break from YouTube, when it came back, I expected that there would be a certain view count, and there was. And it's like one of those things of, okay, but that's because I had an established market and YouTube went, push this. Everything is still kind of learning where we are. I'm so glad we're not doing this as a Twitch stream, because we would be struggling to grow it, I think, with the same regard with like there's no discoverability on Twitch. If this was a Twitch stream, which it could have been, like we could have done this as a Twitch broadcast, especially with the fact that you can't raid or directly host anymore. Like we couldn't like put it onto our channels as easy. Yeah, no, we'd be suffering, I think.
I say it's hard going from that perception of, because you're already established, like any new thing you do will have that weight to it. But it's the same old thing of, from my experience of like trying to push viewers from YouTube to watch my Twitch streams, the percentage of crossover across is so tiny that comes across from YouTube to Twitch. You know, you think, oh, okay, you've got, you know, regularly you're looking at like 40 to 50,000 views a day or whatever, so surely you can convert that into a few thousand viewers for every Twitch stream like daily. No, it's like, if I'm lucky, it's somewhere between like 100 to 200 viewers per Twitch stream, outside of covering brand new games or getting raids and stuff like that. So it is the trickle effect, but also you just lose so many people trying to move to another platform or to another project, even with the best kind of intentions and stuff to it. But I think also it's a reflection of kind of coming into the podcast space at this point. Like there's still plenty of opportunities to grow and to start new projects, but also, yeah, we're coming into a space that is heavily saturated with lots of different podcasts, lots of other established creators within the space, and it's going to take some time. I think something we spoke about kind of when we were kind of just drafting ideas for this was that we kind of knew it would be a case of almost the first like season as such of it being the one where we make the mistakes, we figure things out, we work out what we're doing with it, and then we slowly but surely build on that. And I think it is going to be kind of like a slow, long burner to a point, until we find the right way of pushing it forward. A lot of it as well was done very kindly to give me a breather and a break during my paternity leave and stuff like that. So I haven't been anywhere near as much hands-on with this as I'd like to be. But yeah, it's also really interesting just interacting, with a brand new kind of medium of content for us. It's interesting looking at the TikTok clips as well, of seeing which ones do. Basically, we need to talk about VAT a lot more, because that one really took off. We had like a full-on argument, didn't we, in the comments? I think one person was actually in the end kind of wrong with their understanding of it, but I think they'd very much come from a position of like they felt they knew what they were doing after spending years within the financial sector and stuff. But somebody else was like, no, I'm a bit more kind of tuned in with what these guys are specifically talking about, and they could do this and that if they wanted to claim some money back that way or what have you. And it was just interesting to see like that. And actually, I've just seen there's been another comment within the last 24 hours on it that still picked up on it, and someone else weighing in on the conversation. But it's interesting to see which ones of those have popped off. And I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? Because the ones that pop off the most are the ones where we talk about money. Because I think it is still for many creators like a big old taboo. I don't feel like they don't want to talk about it. Whereas, I mean, I think like largely in a lot of industries, people don't want to talk about salaries and earnings and stuff broadly. Like it should be something we should be far more open talking about, because a lot of the time it should be kind of encouraging other people with similar skill sets. It's like knowing that your worth and salary is fairly weighted against your colleagues. But obviously in a job like we have, where it is completely flexible and constantly changing, I think if anything it's more about just giving an insight into rough expectations, but still you can have very similar content styles and standards and stuff and still have vastly different earnings based on geographical demographics, who's tuning in from where, almost like polar opposites of one channel. Just even though you might have like much lower views, you'll still get way more in revenue just because of the demographics you're hitting and where those ads are being played and to who and what those ads are specifically about, depending on the ad spend and everything else that's going on there. I feel like there's no middle ground. Either creators are very happy to talk about it or they're not. I think it was like my first year that I started streaming on Twitch, and I went to something like EGX or something like that, and there was like a creator workshop that I got invited to with a load of other creators. And I remember sitting next to this guy and we were having a good old chat, and I said, no, I hope you don't mind, like completely understand if you don't, but how many subscribers do you have for Twitch? Which is obviously was kind of me trying to politely sort of just roughly gauge, okay, he's got this many viewers. I wonder how, because also on Twitch, which is far more driven revenue wise by the amount your community supports you could have 1,000 viewers concurrent. You could take that and sample 100 different creators and they could have wildly different revenue, because it all depends on how many of those viewers then choose to sub, donate, interact with bits and stuff. And I was just like, I'm just purely curious. And he was like, I don't talk about my sub numbers. Like, it was a really like, our whole tone of conversation changed. And I was like, okay, fair enough. It was fine. Like, he was instantly like, no. He's just like, I just, as like a rule, I just don't talk about my sub numbers. And I was like, okay, fine, fair enough. And I think I then saw a few months later, he had like a sub count on one of his streams, and I was like, okay, that gives me an insight into it. I don't know why he didn't want to discuss it at the time, but obviously maybe things have changed or what have you.
Isn't it against Twitch? I could be completely wrong here, so feel free to fact check me on TikTok if it ever makes it there. Isn't it against Twitch TOS to talk about your earnings on a stream?
Might be.
Like, directly give all numbers. I think it is.
It might be, yeah. Which is why when I was talking to this guy, I was like, I'm not going to ask you how much you earn. Because also, I was like, in the nicest way possible, I was kind of like, I don't really want to know how much you earn. I want to know where that revenue source is coming from. So I was like, I was just interested to be like, how many subs do you have? Because like, again, and maybe that's why I was trying to avoid like saying like, okay, how much do you earn? And you would be like, I can't tell you because term service or whatever. But I was like, well, you're definitely allowed to be able to talk about the number of subs you have, because you're allowed to have counters and metrics and stuff like that to show how many you have. So people can extrapolate from that vaguely or roughly. Okay, you won't know the number of tiers of subs and stuff like that. But I don't know actually if it's the same on YouTube. I don't think it is being part of the partner program as just being a partner. I think you can quite literally just show the full analytics. I know that when I was part of an MCN, part of the terms of that was that I couldn't disclose the split. I couldn't disclose the amount of revenue I was getting from them. That was all part of it.
One of the other elements is, I mean, it's wild that people don't get to talk about the money as much, but it's also one of those things of, I think it's unfortunately part of like the business world in, say, corporate America. Talking directly about like pay, salary is very frowned upon in America. And some people always think it's like illegal to do, and it's really not. And this is another join the union. Sorry, just slip that in there. No, I totally. But just on that topic, kind of like a sidestep, it's not just content creators that don't have as much luxury to talk about the money. And I think some of it does come from that sort of corporatized, it's frowned upon to talk about how much you're earning with your coworkers kind of thing. And it's that kind of stigma from it. But video editing and people who work in periphery to content creators, like trying to find like a rates card for what is like good for video editors and what video editors should be like striving for in the industry is just as hard as a content creator trying to work out, is this a good value for an ad insert, or just am I hitting my target goals? And someone I will actually like free shout out here to very much go follow them. I think we've mentioned them before on the podcast. I can't be certain. Check out Sam Woodhall if you're an editor. They previously, I don't know if they still edit for, but previously they were the editor for Harris Heller. They're a very knowledgeable individual just about content creation and what should be doing in thumbnails. But they've just started a new business called Post OS, which is like it's kind of like almost like Riverside is for making podcasts. It's like a management tool for video editors. But one of the things he heavily talks about on his socials, and he's working with and also working with unions to try and sort out, is a standard industry rate for paying editors and what people should be looking for. And he's very good at that kind of advice for money and just like industry tips for you, which is more of to support a content creator industry. How do I style my business to sort that? And just generally, just all across the board, I think talking about money is just better for us. It helps everything feel fairer. It helps to make sure you get a good shake, that whoever you're working with gets a good shake. And like, what are you hiding? Like, what's the gain from us not talking about it? Like, I understand wanting to feel private. There's absolutely fine, but there can be like, we can talk about generalizations and ranges. You don't even have to speak from your own part. If you, Lionheart, came to me with like, do you think this is a fair rate for this project? And I mean, it's not a rate that I would expect, but I can still go, no, I think you could probably ask for more with the amount you're doing, or I think it's a little steep because of this reason. You can still have those conversations without saying, oh, they're offering me this much money, how, like, I earn this much money, that kind of thing. I think there's ways around it. But being open with those ideas would just kind of help us all as an industry.
Even just some like broad kind of metrics for what you can charge for some sponsored content would be incredibly like helpful to have that talked about a bit more, because a lot of creators don't know their worth when they get like approached about stuff, and they end up getting taken advantage of. Like I've seen so many creators say, oh, I did this for $100 or something. I'm like, what? No, you should like add another zero on it at least. Like, what are you doing? And also a lot of brands will quite happily, unfortunately, take advantage of creators that kind of say yes to the opening offer. And a lot of the time it would be, far more beneficial to kind of come away, take some time, even just like reach out to some other creator friends and just say, like, what do you guys think of that? And, how does this track with what campaigns and stuff you've done in the past? But I think it's very difficult for creators as well to try and work out and establish their own rates for sponsored content, and knowing like, is this the right amount? Am I asking too much? Or, I want to be able to put together a good response back to this brand or whatever, but also I don't want it to come back as me going, hey, yeah, could I have this amount, or whatever you feel works for you, please, Mr. Brand, sir. Like, I mean, it's another part of some of the skills that you pick up of how to engage and how to communicate with brands and how to kind of network and to get those opportunities. I think a large part of it is only going to be achievable kind of almost by making the mistakes, making the bad choice, and then working out, in the future what works better. The landscape certainly has changed as well in terms of, I think you're far more likely to deal with agencies these days for a lot of like sponsor content. And you can definitely tell the better agencies from the bad ones. The good ones will be very upfront about what the budget is, or they will say, look, we've got this amount for it, but if that doesn't hit your fee rate for this, let us know. We'll go back to the client and we'll talk about it, and we'll figure out a fee that everyone's happy with. Or, just being agencies that are open to that discussion and open to negotiate. Those are definite like green flags basically for working with them. I'll quite happily shout out yours truly. They're a very good agency that they're probably one of my favorite to work with, actually, just because they're always, one, very clear about their brief, two, very clear about what the budget is, and three, they give you kind of plenty of opportunities to try other campaigns that they've got going on, and also just be flexible with how you want to deliver the content that they're looking for. Equally, I've had agencies that are just like, so I've got him being like, yeah, I want $700 for this, and they'll be like, so our budget's $300, and I'll be like, not interested then. It's tough because there's definitely, as a creator, there's got to be times where you're prepared to say no to a deal and value yourself higher than that. Then it just kind of weakens your position for the next time that brand comes to you, or the next time they come to you, they'll just be sort of straight up going, right, you were doing 300, right? And you're like, well, only because that's all you offered me last time. That's the red flags for agencies that will just then take advantage.
Those who won't negotiate again once the value's there is always, you got to be comfortable enough to, and it's a hard topic. Money's always going to be a hard topic, because there are people that will always take that 300, even though they themselves are probably worth more. And the brands know that. It's just kind of a little bit of a sad fact of how the industry works. It would be great if less people could be taken advantage of in that way. Most brands have the money, and if they really want you, and those are the brands that you want to work with, those who really want you and are willing to pay you what you're worth, really. At the same time, don't ever feel ashamed for taking a lower pool if you just need the money as well. That's like totally fair. There's another thing as well, community stigma around taking ad placements or taking promotions. I think it's definitely shifting in current years, but a long time ago there was a big thing of like, you're just a shill. Like, that was like the tone from everyone on the internet, and that kind of made it really hard for content creators.
I think it's now a lot more accepted that there's going to be paid product placement. In a way, people are like, okay, they're a shill, but I enjoy their content, and right, what they're getting money for playing this game early or whatever, and I'm getting to watch them play it early as well. I mean, some people will just be like, don't like anyone that partners up with a game studio or a company or a brand or whatever, you're allowed to have your opinions and dislike people that do that if you want. But there's nothing inherently wrong with that, as long as it's all disclosed, as long as it's not impacting on what you're able to say and what you're doing, and what you're able to show, you know, within reason of what's expected from whatever early access or whatever whatever brand or product that you're working with. When I sort of first started there with the sort of like the OG kind of cast of big like YouTubers out there, and they were just starting to, I think brands were just starting to recognize the value of working alongside some of them. So then suddenly you saw a lot of the really big ones get these brand deals and promotion stuff, and you're like, oh, that's amazing, that's really cool. And then it kind of filtered down through other creators, because, you know, brands and companies realized how powerful creator or influencer marketing was going to be. I feel it also in a way kind of ties into how people perceive like ads and stuff, especially on like YouTube. Every few years you go through people really disliking the direction that ads and stuff like that's going on YouTube. Then people kind of settle in a little bit and just sort of accept how it's going, and then there'll be a change to it and it'll upset everyone again. So it's kind of like ebbs and flows. But I think broadly within the creator space, it's kind of very much established now that, you know, creators past a certain point are going to be looking for brand deals, are going to be looking for sponsorships. They're going to have paid content alongside their non-paid content, alongside their normal stuff. I think probably the biggest thing as a creator is finding the most optimal way of inserting that paid content, that sponsor content into, you know, if it's not meant to be its own separate video, it's about finding ways to integrate that naturally, or as naturally as possible, within your existing stuff, so that one, you end up creating a very genuine piece of content that you know fits and appeals to your audience. So in which case the brand's very happy, but also in a way that then doesn't upset your audience. It's something I've said when I've had sponsor stuff reach out about sponsoring some of my content, and they go, "Oh, can we put it into one of your Total War series?" And I'm like, no, actually, because I don't want to suddenly start putting a paid for thing in part 15 of a series. Of like, I've only had one like fully sponsored series, or a series that had like a sponsor attached to it, and that was when I was working with Asus. That was the laptop, yeah. But I was like, you know, if we're gonna do this bit, I want it for the full series rather than it just being inserted. I mean, I guess I'd probably also take a one-off one for part 1 of a series, but sometimes linking that all up, like I've had some stuff and I'm like, oh, well, I ended up releasing part 1 2 weeks ago, guys, because, you know, I wasn't going to wait to start that series just for you guys to figure out what you're doing, and I'm not going to start injecting this stuff now into part 10. But again, that's very much a me problem with how I create my content and the format that I follow through on my stuff. But it is something I very much bear in mind, and I actually kind of actively try to push the vast majority of my sponsorship and brand deals to my Twitch, to my live streams, which largely has worked out pretty well. Most brands are actually quite happy to work with the much lower viewers, but I think it's because they have that live engagement, so they know that there's that element to it.
I think it's because by going through Twitch compared to your YouTube, it definitely hits your core audience, which probably means that your almost click-through rate on the advertisements, like the uptake on those, is probably better, because again, it's also kind of a little bit more personable. It's going back to when we spoke about selling yourself as a smaller content creator. If you can prove you have a influence over a core audience that will, you know, make sure that they always pick things up, you're far more likely, if not like just as easy, going to get yourself brand deals that will continue on just by the pure fact of you've got a good conversion rate. Like if you've got a highly engaged and active audience, like I'm going to turn the spotlight on you, like you and your now absolutely full Twitch title of sponsorship stuff sometimes, but like Holy, for example, the fact that it's been integrated into the Hot Wings challenge that you do.
Oh yeah, that's worked out pretty well actually.
They know that people are going to want that content because people constantly come to your streams and ask about the hot sauces. Like, when's the next hot sauce challenge? It is a landmark event for you. Like the brand Holy know that, okay, when he does another one of those, we're going to get some conversions because it's tied to purchase orders. If you've got ways to convert that, like that would not work on your YouTube videos. That's a live stream only thing. Basically, as creators, you've got to work out what your unique selling point is, and just someone will take the bite if they've got a brain about them. And your unique selling point isn't just hi, I do these things. If you've got that idea of like doing a hot sauce challenge, or you go, whilst it's not going to be on my YouTube video, we can go to the Twitch streams, which I always push to in my YouTube videos, and it will be there constantly, like having a lower third or a banner, and we can have it in the primary panel and like chat commands. People up for my, that's a lot of tick boxes in like an influencer marketer's mind, because they're like, yes, direct engagement.
Exactly.
I think this is kind of rounding out today. I feel like we are at the end of the conversation. Lionheart needs to go take a break, probably because he's dying of hay fever and chest infection or whatever it was, and also the second coming of fatherhood. That is
so tired.
And you're about to go do a stream, so like,
exactly. It's like 4-hour stream. Woo!
Exactly. Woo, brilliant. Again, thank you everybody so much for listening to another episode of Upload. Remember, you can get in contact with us at hello@uploadpodcast.co.uk. Remember to send in your setups or any questions you have for the podcast. Sometimes if we can't get to a question on the podcast itself, we will still reply to it over the email. There was someone at Yavi. I'm going to give you a shout out because you've been listening and you asked a clarification on something that we were covering in the previous podcast, which was about the audio. What's the audio things?
Ground loop
isolators and
places,
how and when
yes.
to use them. So I sent over some guides and said thank you. Well, definitely we need to do an audio episode because it's something that I love, but I am also plagued by it forever. Like last week, I'm sorry if in the last episode my mic sounded absolutely atrocious. I got plagued by Windows. I think I've sorted it now. According to my ears, anyway, I feel like I've sorted it. But yes, thank you for watching another episode, and we will catch you next time we upload. A lot of them are in storage because a lot of them, I always bought microphones with the option of, can I use this for music? Now, BCD1 was the first one that I couldn't, which is, again, kind of why it fell out of the rotation of my use. In fact, it's something that I should probably, for example, if I ever build a nice podcast studio, which is my dream, or a nice content creation studio, which is my dream, it will be one of those ones that is on regularly use probably, because it is essentially shape-wise very much similar to the SM7B.